Hi, I'm Dr. Samuel Mitchum, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my latest book, uh, Confederate Patton, Richard Taylor and the Red River Campaign of 1864. Um, there are essentially four levels of military operations. You've got grand strategy, the operational level, and tactics. And I'm going to talk about the strategic level and the operational level, which is separate armies, separate corps. We don't have time to go into the tactics, and there really was no grand strategy in the Civil War because grand strategy involves the operation of alliances and the working of alliances, and we weren't able to achieve any alliances with anybody. The Confederacy certainly tried, but was not successful. Lincoln could have had some grand strategy. He had one country that wanted to ally with him against the Confederacy. The King of Siam offered to send him 17 war elephants to support the Union cause. Lincoln turned him down. I'm not sure how that would have worked on a practical matter on the battlefield. And it would also have blown Lincoln's assertion that it was a civil war. It could hardly have been a civil war if he had allies. Strategy deals with the overall plan of the war, and the Union didn't really have a particularly good one. Now, General Winfield Scott, who Lincoln eventually fired, had one. He called the Anaconda Plan to squeeze the South from all directions, thinking the South didn't have resources enough to defend all points of the compass. Lincoln and Northern public opinion early in the war wouldn't accept that. They accepted a strategy I would call high diddle-diddle straight up the middle, and the result was the Union disaster at the First Bull Run. The South, in my opinion, could have won the war one of three ways. Now, I know some people said we never had a chance, and certainly the demographics were against us. The population of the North was 23 million. South had 9 million, but 3.5 million of the Southern population were African Americans, and I don't put them in the same category as white people when it comes to their loyalty to the Confederacy, and I don't know anybody else that does. If you factor out the black population, the South's population was 5.5 million, and the northern population then would have been 22.5 million. Clear 4-to-1 numerical superiority in favor of the North. The North also hired 489,920 foreign mercenaries from 15 different countries. To me, it's not amazing that the South lost. It's amazing as it came as close to winning as it did and held out as long as it did. But I think the South could have won three different ways. It could have won diplomatically, militarily, or politically. Now, diplomatically, the South lost its chance when Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, because there was no way the lower class in Great Britain and France would support a war if it was presented as a war to defend slavery. And Lincoln was able to frame the debate in that way. It wasn't, but that's what the lower classes in Europe thought. So Britain and France did not ally with the Confederacy. The second way was militarily. I think we lost that at Gettysburg and Vicksburg. I don't think there's any way we could have realistic way we could have won the war after those two major defeats. The third way was politically, and when the Red River Campaign began, that was the only chance the South had left. But it was a pretty good chance. To win the war politically, we would have to defeat the Lincoln regime, defeat Abraham Lincoln for re-election in November of 1864, and elect the Democratic candidate. And the Democratic Party had a peace plank in its platform. They were committed to negotiating with the South. Had that happened, anything was possible. And for Lincoln to lose the election, all the South had to do was hold Richmond and Atlanta. At least that's what Abraham Lincoln thought, and that's what he said. He was afraid he would lose. The North was overconfident, though. They had won some major victories, it's true. But they thought the South was a broken reed when 1864 began. I call it the spirit of Bull Run. They had a relapse. We broke them of that in 1861, but by 1864, they'd won Gettysburg, Chattanooga, and Vicksburg. They thought the Southern armies were a few remnants. They'd start the campaign in April and May of 1864. It would be over by September in time for the daddy to come home and see the kids off to school. The North did not realize the South had hidden resources of determination, which were not apparent to the Northern newspaper editors and many of the politicians. Now, Ulysses S. Grant realized it, and General Meade realized it, but the average person didn't. To win politically, the South, like I say, had to hold those two major cities. But the North had a flawed strategy. The North drove for Richmond and Atlanta, properly so, but they should have driven for Mobile, Alabama. Instead, they launched the Red River Campaign for Shreveport, Louisiana. Now, the North controlled the Mississippi River. They had enough naval strength to post a gunboat every 12 miles. The Confederate armies in the Trans-Mississippi, as General Taylor said, were of no more use to the South than if they had been on the Sandwich Islands. But the North was overconfident. They thought it would be an easy march. And the North badly needed cotton. Textiles was the number 2 industry in the North. When the Civil War began, they had 4,745,000 cotton looms, 100,000 spindles. By July of 1862, barely 2 years into the war, well over 3 million of those spindles had been shut down, 3.257 to be exact. 80% of their cotton looms were shut down because of a lack of raw material. They're not very much use if you don't have any cotton. And they badly wanted cotton. And a lot of it was about money. The price of cotton had gone up tremendously. When the war began, the South was producing over 75% of the world's cotton. It was the number 2 industry in the North, right behind railroads. And the price of cotton had increased from 6 cents a pound to $1.09 a pound. That's why they called it white gold. A bale of cotton is 400 pounds. And New Orleans alone exported 2 million bales of cotton a year when the war began. All of this created a great deal of unemployment in New England, and Lincoln was concerned about this because presidents are often identified with their economic programs or saddled with blame or credit for what happens to the economy, and very often quite rightly so. I mean, look at our present situation. They're trying to convince us the economy is great, and people don't believe it. And it wasn't great in the North, and they wanted that cotton. So they went up the Red River. And this was disastrous for the North. First, they had to take 10,000 men away from General Sherman's army. And secondly, it freed the Confederates from Mobile. General Polk's entire corps was able to leave Mobile and join the Confederate Army in front of Atlanta, including General French's entire division and Loring's division. So that was a swing of 24,000 men. That could have affected the outcome of the war, and it very nearly did. I think if President Davis hadn't made the unfortunate appointment of John Bell Hood to command the army in front of Atlanta, the South could have held that position until after the election. Anyway, the Red River Campaign featured General Richard Taylor, who was more like General George Patton than any other person in American history. He was equally profane, perhaps more so. He was well educated. He attended Harvard, didn't like it, graduated from Yale. He drank, smoked, chewed tobacco. He didn't fool around. He was an excellent plantation manager and had a talent for the military affairs. He grew up right. His father was General Zachary Taylor, who won all those victories in northern Mexico during the Mexican War, as well as several against the Indians. What happened is you had 32,000 Yankees advancing on Shreveport in the Army of the Gulf, and they were opposed by Richard Taylor, who had 8,800 men. And he retreated until the Union Army was pursuing him, and they had all their men were strewn along a 20-mile route. Their column was 20 miles long over bad Louisiana roads through pine forests. And Taylor waited till they came up to the Mansfield area and knocked them down like so many dominoes. With less than 9,000 men, he attacked 32,000 men, tore them limb from limb, routed them, chased them for 200 miles all the way across Louisiana, surrounded them twice, almost starved them at Alexandria, cut off the Union fleet. It had to shoot its way out and lost some of its best vessels in the process. And Taylor was mad because the commander of the Trans-Mississippi Department took away 3 of his divisions. And he believed he could have destroyed the whole Union Army had he been allowed to keep those troops. And it makes you wonder, if he had been able to do that, is there any way the North could have captured Atlanta? And I don't think there was. Anyway, the reader can draw his own conclusions about that. But that's the story of the Red River Campaign. If you can imagine one army commanded by General Patton and the other army commanded by Nancy Pelosi, you've got a pretty good handle on the Red River Campaign. The fact that the Confederates were outnumbered almost 4-1 was really immaterial because leadership was decisive. The Confederates also had a great military engineer nobody's recognized, Robertson Boggs. He tried every trick in the book to stop the Union fleet from coming up the Red River. And what he finally did, and I go through all his shenanigans, what he finally did was say, all right, you yam dankies, let's see if you really can sail your ships on wet sand. He moved the river. He blew up the Red River levee and diverted the flow of the Red River into the Bayou Pierre Basin. Over 2/3 of the flow of the river was actually taken away from the river and for about 3 weeks poured into the Bayou Pierre Basin. And the Union admiral, his name was Porter, he was pulling out his hair because it kept raining and the river kept falling. And in the end, he was running aground so frequently he had to turn around and go back. He really waited too long. The biggest ship in the inland fleet was the Eastport It had huge 100-pounder guns, and several of them, and it ran aground 5 times in one 20-mile stretch of the river. And the last time it was stuck so fast, and Taylor was coming up with his cavalry, and they were sniping at the Yankees, that the Yankees had to blow it up. That wasn't the only ship they lost. Red River Campaign was a major disaster for the U.S. Army, and it was the last time they attempted to conquer Louisiana. Louisiana was out of the war at that point. Anyway, that's a quick and dirty overview of Confederate Patton, Richard Taylor, and the Red River Campaign. The book goes into considerable more detail. Thank you very much.